So many skiing skills, variations and drills. Javelin turn, wide pass turn, single leg skiing, dynamic transitions. But practicing an exercise only makes sense when it makes you a better skier. Even the best exercise can teach bad habits and wrong posture when we do it with a poor quality. Knowing and practicing many drills is not the most important thing. Better is doing fewer drills with a better quality. Don't practice some drills 100 times the same way. Double check the key points, correct yourself and make a change. You can make the magic happen, but only when you know what makes an exercise good. Fortunately, most drills and ski techniques have some points in common. You don't have to know all the exercises individually. It is enough to know the fundamental key points, which are common in all. We will review these common key movements to help you improve your skiing. In the first part, we reviewed the most basic functions when standing on two legs symmetrically. Now we will research the asymmetric situations when one leg is shorter and another is longer. In this video we will see how we lift a leg, and in the next one we're gonna check the supporting side of the body. Is it necessary to lift a leg? Of course, it's not required, but it can be useful. It is only a movement element like a Lego block that you can use in certain situations. But when you need it, you must know it. The lifted leg is mostly the inside, less often the outside. For example, in the case of the javelin turn, we leave the inside ski, but in the case of the wide pass turn, we leave the outside, to be more specific, the uphill leg. You can always find the corresponding dryland training drills on the side under the explanations. You don't have to waste your time on the ski slopes. You can work out those Lego blocks at home before your skiing days. In the first episode we considered three joints: the hip, knee and ankle. In case of a single leg posture, the whole structure is more complex. A fourth pivoting point comes into the picture because the pelvis can also move around the supporting side's hip joint, while in the case of a two-leg support, the pelvis is fixed in this plane. The most powerful rule of a proper stance is that you must keep the pelvis stacked and stable, either you stand on one or two legs. It is easier in the case of the symmetric two-leg support, and more challenging in the case of the asymmetric stance. Stabilizing the pelvis is the supporting side's job, so we're gonna review it later in the next video. Look at the following examples. The two movements look similar, but when we see the pelvic area, the two actions are different. The bottom movement is a mistake. The pelvis raises without significant hip flexion. The hip flexors are passive. The top movement is better, although imperfect, because the hip flexors are engaged to a certain extent, which is completely missing in case of the bottom one. The lifting movement should start similarly in all versions, even in the case of the wide pass turn. The origin of the lifting movement is a lifting side's hip joint rather than the standing side. You must lift the femur in the sagittal plane, but not the pelvis in this plane. The knee will move forward and up. When the hip flexion is missing, the skier raises and twists the whole pelvis as a compensatory movement, which is definitely wrong. This is one of the major postural mistakes. The hip flexion lifts the whole leg and helps stabilize the pelvic area. When we compare these two other examples, they are similar regarding the hip and the femur. The only difference is that the hip flexion is more definite in case of the top one. When we compare the ski level, there is a big difference. This difference cannot result from the hip flexion because the hip flexion alone will lift the ski tip. The difference comes from the knee flexion. You must complete a hip flexion with a knee flexion. The knee flexion moves the foot and the ski back. The knee flexion engages the hamstrings and sets us the ski position and level. The flexion of the two joints in combination will result in the correct position of the ski. Understanding one leg stance has another advantage. You can hear on the ski slopes that you must pull back the inside ski. It is an effective movement, but it would help only if you execute it correctly. When it happens from the hip joint as an extension, it is a mistake. It will result in an unstable posture. It makes the situation worse than good. You must pull back the ski and your foot by flexing your knee and keep the knee in place or move forward by a hip flexion. It is a good sign if the knee moves forward while the ski moves back, the tip down and the tail up. If the knee moves backward, it is a sign of a mistake. We will make a mistake when our primary goal is taking the ski off the snow. Keeping the ski off the snow is not the objective of the drills, it's just a side effect of the actions we are working out. The fundamental aim is the coordinated muscle activity of the pelvic area and the lower limb. The position of the ski is only the consequence of those actions. Thank you for being here. If you like this content, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't want to miss any upcoming videos, please subscribe and turn on the notifications. And if you have any questions or you don't agree, please leave a comment to start a conversation. See you soon!